Welcome to rSlash Bestof Redditor Updates, where OP's wife slowly transforms into a Karen, and the cause for it is downright crazy. Our next Reddit post comes from rSlash Relationships. I'm a 37-year-old man, and my 36-year-old wife is turning into an absolute hippie psycho person, and me and my son can't stand it anymore. A bit of backstory, I'm from Puerto Rico and my wife is from suburban Kansas City. I moved to New York City in 1984 and she moved here at 18 for college and fell in love with the city. We actually met at a bar and had a one-night stand, and she got pregnant. At first, we wanted her to get an abortion, but we kind of fell in love at first one-night stand and we got married when our son was 3 months old. We are very, very different people. I'm from the South Bronx and grew up extremely rough. I got into fights, I've been stabbed, I've been shot at, not a great upbringing. I wasn't the worst kid, but my friends were truly bad people. But I had mostly gotten out of that lifestyle by the time that I met her. So basically, we've raised our son, who's now 12, and we've had our ups and downs, but we're both successful at our jobs and whatnot. But in the past year or two, my wife's attitude towards certain things have changed. Here's a list of what I'm talking about. She refuses to eat gluten. This should give you an idea of the stereotype that she fits into now. She's now 100% vegan and gets extremely mad whenever we eat meat in our house. She does yoga 3 times a week, and she cries when we don't want to go with her. She suddenly doesn't like movies with violence or drugs or partying. She's extremely protective of our son about this. She doesn't let our son hang out with his friends sometimes because the friends are too rowdy and come from uncultured families. She doesn't let our son bike around the neighborhood with his friends at all. She needs to constantly be with him when he's hanging out. She literally took his iPad and changed the music to what she considers good music. Stuff like Justin Timberlake, Mumford & Sons, Macklemore, Taylor Swift, stuff like that. Our son likes electronic dance music and metal. This was one of the worst things she did, in my opinion. She thinks that I'm too masculine in the way that I act and constantly tries to correct the way that I act, saying that I have toxic masculinity in me. She does this constantly when I tell her that I don't like how she babies our son. She calls the cops on basically any crime that she sees, including one time when we walked by a house party and she called the cops because underage drinking was happening, and she wanted to keep her community safe. One time, she also called the cops because a few Spanish teenagers were playing soccer in the street and she just assumed they were up to no good. That made me insanely upset. Alright, I gotta stop the story here real quick. OP, you said your wife is turning into a hippie psycho person? Sounds like she's turning into a Karen, not a hippie. But back to the story. Honestly, this is just the tip of the iceberg. This has been her for the past 2 to 3 years, and we've gotten into near constant arguments about this. I tell her that she's too sensitive about nearly everything, and then she goes off on rants and tries to show me all these weird articles about how what I'm doing is gaslighting her. She's also trying really, really hard to act young. Like, she goes to indie shows in Williamsburg filled with 22-year-old hipsters and tries to chat people up to make friends. Then, when she gets rejected or something like that from those indie circles, she comes home and cries in my arms and is depressed for days. She wants so badly to be a part of that crowd. She seems to have anxiety and depression issues. I do honestly feel bad for her. She keeps up this insane persona. She describes herself as a modern-day hippie, and she spends all her time checking out new cafes and brunch spots with her friends. I know how this got started. She got a job at this new office filled with young yuppies. Basically, right after getting this new job, she changed into this new person. I think to keep up with her coworkers. But it's clearly turned into something much more devastating and self-esteem damaging than that. I just want her to be herself, not this crazy person trying to perfect everything around her to fit her worldview. It all hit a bad point a week ago when my son, who is in constant conflict with her, got into a major argument with her. The argument was over whether or not he could hang out with his friends who were outside, and she said no because there were too many of them, and she thought that it was bad to hang out in such large groups. What? This is the type of stuff that she cares about. However, I know the real reason why she didn't want him out there was because the kids were mostly black and Spanish. But he's half Puerto Rican. My son got so mad that he took dishes and began shattering them on the ground. Then he left and didn't come back for 5 hours while my wife hysterically cried and called the cops to find him. Since then, he hasn't been allowed to leave the house, and my wife has been crying nightly for losing our son. She's become extra horrible towards me and my son. She thinks that I'm on his side simply because I tried to defend him and say that she was overreacting. But every time I say that she's overreacting, she has a breakdown and says that I'm just doing what men do to women. I don't even know what to do anymore. I know this isn't her. I know that she's developed some serious mental problems in the last 2 to 3 years. I know this isn't normal for her. I don't want to divorce her, but I'm not sure if I can handle this any longer. She's broken down. She's in bed crying nearly all day. She'll sometimes go off yelling at me that I'm the epitome of toxic masculinity. And then, an hour later, she'll be crying in my arms saying that she loves me more than anything. Is this some kind of personality disorder? Does she need therapy? What can I say to make her calm down? Just what the hell do I do? So down in the comments, there's a huge swath of opinions. Some people are saying she's toxic, dump her. Some people are saying that she's put this perfect image in her head of what she has to be, strong and feminine and a mother and socially aware and young and beautiful, and she's just sort of like overloaded herself with all these pressures. And then, interestingly, another person, okay, I'm just going to read this comment from Ella PB. Let me share something with you as an ex-vegan. Her emotional distress could very well be due to a vitamin D and or B12 deficiency. Yeah, I know, this sounds crazy, but this is a real problem, and this deficiency makes you a depressed, weeping wacko. Vegans usually don't get enough vitamin D or B12 through their diet, and both should be supplemented. This is scientifically documented. Is she taking a B12 supplement? Anyways, 2 months later, OP posted an update. My wife had an absolute breakdown at both me and my son, and she basically ran away and got wasted at a bar, then came back and threatened to kill herself with pills. The police were called, they came, and by the time that they came, she was just crying on the couch, so the cops left. I didn't really know what to do. My son was crying and everything. I told her she has to go to a mental hospital or see the doctor as soon as possible. Then she got even more mad at me, and she went upstairs and just started screaming like an insane person. She did end up going to the doctor, who diagnosed her with B12 deficiency at a severe level. Just like you guys said. She's been taking B12 pills, and I can't even describe what has changed in her. She went from an absolute downward spiral into madness and controlling everything around her to just being more clear-minded and calm. She sometimes feels weird about admitting just how wrong she was about certain things. And she said that she never realized how blind she was to how horrible she was treating the people around her. She said that her anxiety over things would sometimes spike through the roof, and she over-relied on blogs that she read on the internet to help control her life. I'm glad that she's been able to admit these things. Obviously, the B12 deficiency was part of it, but I think that there were still some insecurity problems there as well. I'm just glad that she spent the last 2 weeks realizing how problematic she's been. She said that she was like in a trance where she thought the entire world was against her, and the things that she read on the internet confirmed that there was some kind of global conspiracy, as she described it, to make her be a dependent person or something like that. I'm just so glad that she's back. Yo, that's crazy. What food has B12 in it? It's in fish, meat, poultry, eggs, and dairy products. So an egg salad sandwich could have literally cured this woman's insanity. That's crazy. She was about to off herself, but OP could have been like, here, have some bacon. And then she gets cured? Is that what that's like? That's crazy, man. So that's a cool story. I think I'm going to stop my commentary so I can go take my multivitamins. I'll be back for the next story. Our next Reddit post is from rSlash I'm sitting in the back of my RV as my husband rants about how lovely the trip would be if I hadn't joined him. This is the first time that an issue like this has come up in our marriage, and I don't know what to do. I've been writing romance novels since I was in college. I was a relatively successful author, and I've made a living off selling my novels ever since. I don't make a lot of money, but I do bring home about $40,000 a year in book sales. This allows me to stay at home during the day so I can write and also make crafts to sell in my Etsy shop. A few years after college, I met Tim, and we instantly hit it off. We dated for 3 years before tying the knot, and we bought a house shortly after. Tim makes his living off of investments in stocks. However, we keep our finances separate. This is because Tim inherited a vast amount of money from his family, and before we married, I signed a prenup agreement in order to ease his mind. We both contribute an equal share to the joint bank account for bills, then we use the remainder of our money for ourselves. About a year ago, I landed a contract to write part of a romance series. The contract was huge! The payout was over $120,000 for a few months' work. I contributed my share to the joint account, and then I put the rest of the money in the bank so I could buy an RV. I've always wanted an RV because I love to travel, and nothing would make me happier than being able to write while on the road. Tim is often away on business for days at a time, so the RV would give me an opportunity to get out of the house while he's away. After researching for 6 months, I chose a lightly used RV, and I purchased it from the owners for a great price. When Tim found out that I purchased the RV, he was excited. He has a travel trailer, but it's not the same as an all-in-one RV. He loves RVs, and he wanted to immediately take it out for a trip across the state. We took our trip, and Tim couldn't stop talking about how much he enjoyed the experience, and he started talking about taking more trips together. I gently reminded him that even though the RV is a fun thing for us to have for vacations, that its main purpose is for me to have something to do while he's away for business. But still, we could take plenty of vacations together. Tim agreed with me, and he let it go for a while. The thing is, in the past few weeks, Tim has been badgering me about taking the RV with him on his business trips. He usually flies when he goes to check his rental properties and visit family, and he's gone for like 4 to 5 days at a time. We got into an argument because he had to evict a tenant and he wanted to drive the RV across the state to do so. I asked him if I could come, and Tim said that he would prefer if I didn't. I then said that if I couldn't come with him, then he couldn't take my RV. I suggested that he take his travel trailer instead, and he got mad and stormed out of the house. About an hour later, he started texting me like nothing had happened, and then he said that he was taking the RV as if our previous conversation had never happened. I called him and said that he had just purchased a brand new pickup, and if I'm not allowed to drive his new truck in his absence, then why should he get to take my RV when I'm not coming on the trip? Tim and I went back and forth, and eventually he said that I could come along if it meant that much to me. I said that I would come along, and now I regret everything. I'm sitting in the back of my own RV with a man who won't let me touch the wheel. It's been 3 days since the trip has started, and all Tim has done is rant about how awesome the RV trip would be if I weren't with him. It's made me question everything in our marriage, from how we split our finances to how we argue and function together. This is the first time that anything like this has ever happened, and I don't know what to do in this situation. He's still ranting as I type this, and he has never done that before either. Okay, there's an update below this, but one thing I'm kind of wondering about is it's kind of weird that he flies for business, because OP said that he makes all of his money off of stocks and investments, so why does he need to travel? Yeah, he's got rental properties apparently, but if the rental properties are so far away that he has to fly to get to them, then why not just get a rental agency? Why does he have to do all this himself and rack up travel bills? Just kind of strange. I think something fishy's going on here. Then, 2 weeks later, OP posted an update. When I made my first post, we were on the road in the RV, and my husband was giving me the cold shoulder while he complained at me from the driver's seat. You all had some great advice for me about what I should do, and I listened to a few people who suggested that he might be cheating on me. Tim had left his iPad in the back of the RV to charge while he drove. I'm not proud of this, but I was able to sneak his iPad into the bedroom while he was distracted by the road. He was logged into his email account, and I quickly skimmed over his inbox, but didn't find anything suspicious. I then had the idea to check his sent folder, and I found out that he had been chatting up his ex from college. It made me sick to my stomach to read the messages, but luckily they hadn't yet been physical. The message he sent to his ex was basically, "I can't wait to get my hands on you. It's been years since I felt that mouth. I'm excited." I was disgusted, but I tried to keep calm. We were on the road headed to another state, and we planned on stopping at his mother's house. I knew that if these messages were in his sent folder, that meant that he had deleted the inbox messages. Tim was not planning on being caught and was trying to hide his tracks. He wanted my RV so that he could take his ex all around the state and have fun without leaving a credit card trace. I took photos of the emails and sent them to myself in order to preserve the evidence. I then went back to the front of the RV and acted as if everything was fine. I apologized, don't worry, I lied, for how I'd acted, and I suggested that we ask his mom to help us work through this. Tim said that he was sorry and that he accepted my apology. He said that he was looking forward to using the RV in the future and that he was glad that I'd come to see reason. I smiled and nodded, but on the inside, I was cursing his existence. We made it to his mom's house, and I made up an excuse about having to change because my clothes were wrinkled. Tim went inside his mom's place without me, and I started throwing all of his clothes and belongings into a trash bag. I then went inside his mom's house, and Tim was sitting with his mom in the kitchen. He asked me what I was doing with the bag, and I told him that I was giving him his clothes so that I could leave. Tim got angry and asked me what the F I was doing, and his mom was simply confused. She asked me what was going on, and I told her, I'm not sure myself. I'm waiting for Tim to explain why he was planning to cheat on me with his ex. Tim's mom then started to cry and yell at Tim while he tried to calm her down. I know that Reddit doesn't have a lot of love for religion, but Tim's mother is a fundamentalist Christian. She loved me from the minute that Tim introduced me to her, and it would be an understatement to say that she was very upset with her adulterous son. Tim never tried to apologize to me. Instead, he chased after his mother, saying that he was sorry to her. This made her cry even harder because she knew that he wasn't even trying to make amends with me. He was just apologizing to her. She hugged me and told me to go home and she would handle her son. I thanked her and took the RV keys from Tim. This ended up being a minor wrestling match, and then I left. I drove home crying, but at least I got rid of my butthole ex-husband. Tim called me the next day and begged me to come back to him. He said it was all a mistake, that he was sorry. I asked him why he didn't apologize at his mother's house, why he didn't say that he was sorry when I was handing him his bag. I told him that he didn't care about cheating on me, that all he cared about was how bad it made him look to his family. He tried to explain himself, but I cut him off and hung up. I blocked him on all social media and haven't heard anything since. I've gotten a lawyer and I've already started the divorce process. Then, 7 years later, OP posted an update. Long story short, the prenup wasn't even considered during the divorce. Our lawyers worked out an agreement to split all assets acquired during marriage 50-50 to avoid a drawn-out legal battle. I did end up getting slightly more than I put in during the marriage, but not by much. In the end, I was happier to just get rid of him quickly. And yes, I kept the RV after the divorce settlement. I stayed in touch with his mother-in-law until her passing last year. She was someone who loved God, and she never truly forgave her son for committing the sin of adultery. Her own husband left her for another woman decades ago, and she had never moved past it. Seeing her son commit the same sin almost broke her, especially since I had fulfilled what she considered to be my wifely obligations. As for me, I'm happily single to this day, and I'm still a writer. So I don't read romance books. I don't have a clue who this author is, but I wonder for the fans of this writer if it's very evident that this major life event happened and you can see it in the stories that she writes. So book 1 is my forbidden romance with my professor, and book 2 is hot firefighter puts out the fire in my pants. And then later that year, book 3 is my revenge on my cheating ex-husband while I screw every man in town to get back at him. That was r/Best of Redditor updates. And if you like this content, check out my podcast where I publish the exact same episodes. Also, hit that subscribe button because I put out new Reddit videos every single day.